discussed 2 items, and there was no reportable action on those items pending litigation. Join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The roll call will reflect that all directors are present. I already reported that there was no reportable action from our closed session. Now it's open time for members of the public to raise items not on the agenda or the future agenda. Does anyone from the public have anything they'd like to share at any time? Seeing none, I'll move on to our consent calendar. We have one item on our consent calendar, which is the RGS contract, which we discussed at the previous meeting. I'd like to pull it, please. Okay. Pulling that item, please.
She's not here. Wonder if I should just continue it.
I would be happy to answer any questions that I can try to answer. We purposely asked her not to be here this evening.
I don't think it can be.
Well, we had direction that was on consent calendar, which is why we asked her not to be here. So if there's any questions, we can answer.
That direction for consent? I don't remember that.
Yeah, no, we agreed, we said it.
Okay.
Are there specific questions, Pam?
Oh, yeah.
Why don't you run?
You ready? Okay, so it was, I had clearly asked her, she did put in, what is it, 38 hours a week, 8 hours on site, which is what I'd asked, but I'd also, if you look throughout the contract, she says she will bring in various assignments for hours needed, etc. I had asked her, anybody that she's going to use, that we have their name, what they're going to charge, and what is their credentials.
Sure.
It's not here.
You-
This is our third go around.
Yeah, the reason it's not there is, as she's explained, there are aspects of this that we're just not going to know enough detail about until we're further along in the process. So what I can tell you, and what is clear, and we tried to make clear in here, is that when such a need is identified for, say, a specialty consultant for their team that they would bring in, that process would be vetted with the HR committee and through the rest of the checks and balances to say, here's why we're bringing them on, here's what it's going to cost, etc. So what we understood the concern was cost accountability, cost control, clear and timely reporting. And that all makes sense, and we've tried to identify how we're doing that. And what Sophia has made a repeated point of, which I agree with, is that the very nature of a 12-month human resources services contract for an organization like ours has a certain amount of to be determined at this point. And they're working within those parameters. So I don't think it's an unusual approach under the circumstances. But again, we've tried to kind of explain in more detail what's the basis of the numbers.
Well, we've had a problem in the past with the contract.
With their contract?
No, with a different contract.
Okay, so we've had a contract with RGS for 6 months now.
No smile.
No. Okay, but RGS, we've had a contract with them since September of 2013.
And so just to be clear, we started out, what did we pay them initially last year? What was the contract?
We're still operating under, until this contract is approved, we're operating under what is now a not to exceed $140,000 limit.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's the current contract that was adopted back in September of 2013.
That money will be used up. And
It won't all be used up if this new contract is put into place.
what was the 45,000? Was that included in the 200,000?
When we brought you the renewal contract,
Right.
it was before you had seen a draft budget. So the board's direction was, we like the project, we like doing the human resources, we're not comfortable signing a two-year, pardon me, not a two-year, but a
Right,
one-year
it was a-
contract until we have a
right.
budget.
Right, I know that.
So we brought it back a second time after we had a budget and said, same contract, or pardon me, I skipped a step. So the workaround we came up with was, so they would not have to interrupt their efforts, the board agreed to simply do a quick amendment, which upped the spending limit so they could keep working. The idea being that that would allow the process to complete itself through June, the adoption of the new budget, their contract would come together. All that has occurred, and I think this will be the third or fourth time at this point that we've had the contract, but the only thing that's changed at this point is the amount of time and the fact that we've modified the cap to $200,000. So my point really, I guess what I want to emphasize is it really has been well vetted. I'm not sure what questions
Yeah,
are
I don't think we can
Okay, I'm not
compare
done.
this.
Can I finish?
Okay, go
Can I
ahead.
just finish?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so to be clear, last year we're going to pay them about $140,000 for their services, and now we're going to do $200,000 for this next coming year budget for them. Is that right? Because I'm not sure.
Roughly correct, yes. Fiscal year 13-14 will be about $120,000.
And the reason for the increase in the contract?
Greatly increased scope of services. Now that they've spent 6 months assessing the organization and they have a target set of things they're going to be getting done, so yeah.
And that's in the matrix.
Well, that's what I'm wondering is,
12 months.
sorry?
The contract is now full 12 months. We didn't begin with them until nearly a
Oh,
full
right.
quarter
Right.
passed.
Thank
I know
you.
that, I know that.
Thank you.
That's part of it.
Okay, so,
Yeah,
It's
sorry.
annualized at 190 or
It's a,
okay, I'm just wondering,
No,
it'd
that's
be
a
nice
good
if
point.
they could do more training with that extra money for the board, for staff, or maybe be in the
It's in the
office
matrix,
more.
yeah.
I mean, I don't really
Four
know
pages
how
of
the
that.
money's being divvied up.
And it's in the matrix there, it's in
If you
4
look at
pages.
it, it's
Right, I
Matrix.
saw that, but it's kind of, it's
It is
so
very general right
compacted,
now.
I can't figure out where the money's going where. But, I mean, I'm willing to
They-
get
they-
ahead, I don't want to hold
yeah,
this
no,
up.
I understand that.
But I
That's-
get nervous.
I understand, and that's what we've been trying to explain is basically if you look at the flow of information as they
There's a
execute the
timeline,
work.
yeah.
Yeah, there'll be certain products where they'll be like, okay, now we can produce, these new job descriptions or something. That will be the deliverable.
Okay.
But I think the best answer I can give you is that the specific allocation of the budget will be flexible, but it will be tracked and reported on every month.
Every month.
And it will be tied.
Can it go to the financial committee, please?
Well, it can go to HR and finance if you like, yeah. And we've made it very clear to them, I just had this conversation yesterday, that the allocation of resources and the progress across these broad goal areas is what we want to see it tracked on, so they can show us the value of what's happening in these areas. So I think they're very clear on that. I know it doesn't have the level of detail that we would normally, for a scope of services.
No, and we've had this major problem.
Yeah, we've had
Major
bad
problem.
experiences.
And we had a
Well, wait.
contract, we were in for a whole year.
Yeah, we've had bad
We have
experiences.
one bad experience, and it was a totally different kind of a contract. It was a monthly stipend contract.
Okay.
And this is a deliverable month-by-month contract,
Okay,
and you have to show each month what you did.
okay.
Totally different kind
And
of
it's based
contract.
on services provided per hour, so
Yeah.
it's not going to be I get $7,000 a month.
Yeah, good.
Okay, so I have you can terminate this contract whenever you want.
Very quickly, it's either 30 or 60 days.
It is.
Either party with written notice, but it's a very specific and simple.
And when we cut that service, how is, do we prorate the money that we're not paid? Because this is a whole year contract. You know what I'm
No,
going,
you only
Julie?
pay
Pay
them
where
what they do.
services provided.
You know what I'm going?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so you would,
We got-
if we terminated
That
them,
was the
then-
place we got into trouble. And, an agency in this contract is, some of the terminology the agency, does that mean us? Or does that mean RGS?
RGS.
Can you give me an example
On
page?
page 3 of 16, says agency shall not have the ability to direct how services are to be performed.
No, agency is us, and RGS is our, Regional Government Service Authority is RGS, so agency applies to us.
Why wouldn't we have the ability to direct services?
I think because they want to, yeah.
Except as set forth in
Because
the
we're leaving it
exhibit.
up there as
Yeah.
tweets, I would
Yes,
say.
that's basically it. What they're saying is they're going to do the work largely as, they're the professionals who
So then
hire.
I guess what I want to say, Greg, is if you see that where they're going is not with the agency, us need, or the ratepayers need,
Right,
and you say, stop, and we want it to go this way.
no question. In a
Okay,
heartbeat.
I just wanted to make sure this
Absolutely.
clause, go ahead, Julie.
Well, I was just going to say, I think there might be situations where they're having to do some sort of personnel investigation and where they legally would need to be independent and do it without
So
our influence. Because
that
they
makes
might-
sense.
Yeah.
This doesn't bind us in a way that if we, okay, I just want to make sure this is
No.
part of the contract.
No, good questions. Again, we
Can
hire
you take
them.
that out? Or,
Yeah, they're,
Julie,
so
what do you think?
I think they're just establishing their independence from the district.
Yeah.
They are acting as an independent contractor. So we have limited, we're not there to micromanage them basically. They're here to do a service. They're going to take a certain amount of leeway as a specialist in that field, is how I read that. To your earlier point though, it is very clear working with the team, and we've worked with this team now, since September roughly. They have no other interest, but then they align well with our goals.
And,
It makes their whole purpose of their whole definition of success is that's what's happening.
No, I know that's where they're coming from,
Yeah.
but this is the contract.
No, absolutely good. It's a good point, Cam. I just want to assure the board.
He's
that-
trying to
What
protect
sentence are we talking about?
our us.
Right,
the
so
agency.
I just want to assure the board, because this isn't a affordable, working.
Which section? Which item?
Oh, page 3 of 16,
Right.
the bottom, agency shall not have the ability to direct how services are to be
that's
performed.
under the independent contractor.
Except as set forth in the exhibits, except on what we agreed to already. If we haven't agreed to something, we can't say you gotta do this.
And then
We have to have some kind of additional agreement to do
But
something.
Pam, under the termination section, it also, this will, I think, help ease your fears. It says, agency has the sole discretion to determine if services provided by RGS are satisfactory to the agency. And we have to do that in good faith. If the agency determines the services performed or not, the agency may terminate. So they have a right to be independent in how they perform the services
that-
attached.
Okay, I just
And
want
we,
to...
at our sole discretion, we can say you're doing it okay or you're not, and then, and it also says that, they get paid, only for the services which have been provided thus far, for right before termination. So, they get to be very, very independent, but then it's our sole discretion, which cannot be withheld or be in bad faith. We get to determine if they're performing the services satisfactory or not. So it's a balance.
Okay. This page 10 of 16, it talks about hiring employees. Can you just quickly go over that, Julie? I wasn't quite sure. Charged, it said agency will be charged a fee.
Yeah, actually, I can
Full-time
address that. This has to do with the nature of RGS's business. We're working with them for human resources, but they provide a broad range of professional level local government services under contract. So you might hire them for a temporary city manager or any number of senior management positions within local government. I think this language deals with, they bring you someone, they work for 6 months and you really like them,
You try to
you-
steal
Gonna
it.
cost you to steal
Basically,
it.
yeah, you say we would like to
Oh,
keep this
okay.
person now.
So that's like part of.
Because that RGS provides, we're working with a very small slice of their area of focus,
Okay.
you know.
Right.
But I believe that that's how I
Yeah,
interpret that.
that's-
It's a competitive, not competitive, it's a standard clause. If we loan you a person under contract and you really like it,
It'll
we'll
cost
keep
you.
them.
Plus you
Yeah.
want salary.
We want our.
This is actually-
They're not a placement service, they're a
Yeah.
temporary
This
service.
is, and this is cheap, a month is cheap.
They,
Yes.
they expect to get their people
Year.
back at the end of the agreement.
Okay, so moving on to page 1216,
Okay.
who is the Regional Government Services Authority?
That is the, that is the
RGS.
JPA,
Oh,
yeah,
that's
them.
them, okay. And then, uh, hold on, I don't have much left. Okay, so, but, so, oh, I know, on page 15 and 16, the scope of work.
Okay,
This part I didn't go over as much.
okay.
Would that include doing any staff, board training?
You know, this,
I couldn't,
it doesn't, but I can assure
Did
you
we
that
add
it's
that?
what we're already working on.
or would
what
you
I-
outsource it, is that why? it's
No,
not here?
it's, well, this is a bit of a digression, but one of the things they're helping us with right now is we're doing a very quick, we're quickly preparing an orientation package, a sort of onboarding plan for the new board members. And they've been a great resource in that, and we've been identifying certain core training and all kinds of good stuff. So the short answer to your question is I do not think it is in here. It's not going to take a lot for us to put together those kinds of suggestions and recommendations. So we're actually already doing that, Pam. It is not in here. But I
Can we just add it on here?
absolutely. I don't think that would be a problem. If-
Probably 1.4.
let's see, coach or train managers. Well, actually, let me back up a second. Is that something that the board wants? The RGS,
We already talked about this in the HR committee,
I
and
think we want to keep them separate.
and it was a separate item, it wasn't included in the list as a comprehensive or board policy.
Yeah.
And what we, if I may add, so policies and procedures for board, new incoming board, et cetera. We made the decision and brought it back to our committee, our regular board meetings, last week we discussed it. The bottom line is, that probably would not be included in this contract because that may take more time from RGS. It isn't covered in this contract. The orientation packet, accumulating information, just to get folks started with the basics that we all get when we come onto this board, the board book and all the other ancillary, the SSMPD and other things. That was part of the deliverable,
Yeah.
but that was something that our board felt that it needs to be, it's also kind of a strategic plan for the board too. So in the sense of how the board is to function as a board.
Well, so let me, I actually.
Sorry.
You
quite
probably know
specific.
why I'm bringing this.
No, I know, because we've actually just spoke about this.
Well, we talked about this
Okay,
about
well,
a year
for
ago.
everyone's, whatever.
Yeah.
Wednesdays are HR day, that's when they're in the office, so we just happen to have met on this topic, meaning the planning that's going on for the onboarding. And basically, again, that's not a real extensive effort, but they are identifying, for example, where we might have a resource like you've met, I think, Brent Ives.
Special district.
Yeah,
I forgot to
for
say
special
that.
So there's a number of different resources out there that have a really good, reputation for just good basic, short functional training, on Brown app and all kinds of good stuff. So we're looking at a kind of a mix of services like that to provide right off the bat, just so you pick a schedule and go. So that's a work in progress, but I think what I want to make sure everyone's loud and clear on is we are going to be trying to bring you guys some clear opportunities for professional development and things we hope you find interesting.
Yeah,
So,
it would
and
help our,
worthwhile.
working together
Oh, no, yeah,
and
Yeah.
moving ahead.
yeah, so that's not addressed in here, Pam,
Yeah, does
but
it
I
need
can
part of
assure
this?
you that
You
we're
remember
not.
we had that conversation?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I can assure you that we're not unaware of the benefits of putting some.
I mean,
time
you're
in.
right, Brett, what's his name, Brett?
Yeah, yeah,
All
he's
those
just
things
one
are,
resource.
all
There's-
those things are really wonderful, but I think
Yeah,
we're not gonna do them if we have, if it comes to us, I think.
yeah,
And it gives us the process and the dynamics of
well,
working together.
that'll help drive it. Yeah.
Okay, so,
Well,
but,
But I bet you, as a board, you could
get him,
require that we do that.
that's,
You know, your president
that's what
says,
I'm going forward, is
Yeah.
like building us as a, team,
Yeah.
Yeah, I-
communication
I
and all
agree.
that.
I
Okay.
agree.
Okay. All right,
The-
I'm
the-
sorry I dragged this out.
Well, the nature of this
but,
contract really is not for board education, it's for human resource management, which is a different issue altogether.
Well, we-
Okay, I think I'm done, sorry, Frank, so.
We have to be specific.
Thank you.
I have two comments, sure. And CASA puts on these training sessions for new board members.
Right.
You know, League of California Cities, CASA, and what's the other group we belong to?
CSBA.
CSR,
Special
Special
district.
districts, yeah.
Well, that, now that's,
Yeah, so.
It's got a new name, but.
They'll be putting on programs for new. I'm on page 3 of 16, sections 2 and 4, about the term of the agreement and termination. And generally, a contract has a beginning date and an ending date. And this contract reads, shall continue until the date anticipated in the exhibits to terminate. And down in section 4, it's an effective date that says, is anticipated to remain in force through June 30th, 2015. Why don't we just, I think we need to just say the contract runs till June 30th, 2015, period. I mean,
Sure.
instead of the words anticipated, and
Okay.
it seems at some point, and it seems at some point, we're going to want to reevaluate our HR services, just to figure out if we need to hire an employee to do it, or to contract with, say, the city of Santa Fe or the county of Marin for HR services, or to continue with
that's a good point.
with this group. You know, we will have had them almost 2 years. So I'm saying, if we just say, shall continue on section 2,
Yeah.
shall continue
Or what about,
until June 30th, 2015.
or section 4, effective date, this agreement shall be effective on the first date herein above. The start date for the services shall be performed is July 1st, 2014, and strike that sentence, and then just say July 1st, 2014 through June 30th, 2015?
Perfect, yeah, simple, just a simple.
Okay, very good.
That way, and anticipated doesn't leave someone to
Okay.
believe.
Those are very specific changes, we can just redline those in. I don't see a problem with those from their perspective.
No, not at all. It's just some clarity in the
No, I think that's great.
And then on page 13 of 16, then just a question. Under number 2, reimbursement for RGS's administrative costs. I see there, we're paying travel expenses. And I'm wondering, do we know what the travel expenses have been so far? How are we building those?
You know, I don't off the top, I've seen their invoices, and I just couldn't tell you a number. I do believe, I want to say you're able to see them separately, but I'm not, I'd have to check. They both come from, one comes from, I think north of Santa Rosa ways, and the other comes from right around Santa Rosa.
It's like Wendy has some information.
Oh,
They
sure.
don't bill us for their travel to come to the office for their regular business
Okay,
hours.
very good.
This pertains only to if they have to travel somewhere on
Some
district
location.
business for a meeting. Say they needed to meet with a union rep outside.
Okay, well,
Yeah, that's what I was
very good.
thinking, it
Thank
might
you.
be a union.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
Right.
very helpful. I wasn't aware of that clarification.
Right, yeah. They just treat that as a normal community.
What about our board meetings?
They,
They're
don't bill us
usually
for
here
travel.
already, so I doubt it, because they
Oh.
come down that morning, and
Okay.
so we had to stay
And
there.
then, are we paying them while they're here?
For the board meeting,
Mhm.
I think if they're here in attendance at the board meeting, we are on the clock, because they're here for their agenda items.
Our board meetings can be 4 to 5 hours long.
Shorter.
Yes.
Why can't we do a teleconference? I mean,
We maybe could.
Or agendize them early so they
So
can
they could-
Yeah.
come in and then not have to sit around for
yeah,
an
that,
hour.
because she's 105 an hour.
Correct. Yeah, no, it's a good point. So typically right now it's been good because she's, she's had time to sit in front of the board and listen and interact, which has been helpful. Okay. So we've got some very specific red line changes that I would think would be fine to just go ahead and complete with RGS. I don't expect them to have any problems.
We need to go out to the public even consent calendar items. Is that correct?
Well,
Yeah.
since it got pulled, yeah.
Okay. Do you have any public comment on this item?
Okay. You already know, my name is Laura Ethel, I live in Larkspur on the way through here. And I was at the board meeting where this contract came up for renewal, and you added the 45,000, I guess. And I have told every board member, subsequent to that meeting, that I believe this is an outrageously expensive contract for human resources consulting. I would like to be persuaded that you know you're getting something deliverable that is really worthwhile. I sure haven't heard it, and I was here to hear her presentation. I'd like to know what you're getting for your money, because this is a lot of money when it doesn't appear to me obvious that it's necessary.
Any other public comment?
I would really like staff to, if you can respond to why we brought in HR and some of the pluses, and that we are now, and I think that we sort of missed the boat not to evaluate
Yeah.
her in the last year.
Well,
But
so the
I think we
history-
should do a
the-
90-day eval or something.
Well, maybe, I guess I'm not sure, did you want me to address the
Yeah.
comment that was
Yeah.
just made? Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I thought. So the district, I'll try to keep this brief and it will be about a lot. The district has had a very tumultuous and extremely expensive human resources history for at least the last 10 years by all accounts. We've had a very poor record. That's resulted in a lot of lawsuits and a lot of bad employee management relations, which have resulted in real monetary costs to the district. So that's one aspect. As a general manager, when I started, it was immediately clear to me that the lack of good internal human resources management was a critical, fatal flaw to the organization. We were not going to be making progress in most other fronts until we could basically tamp down the continual disruption of the HR problems. Because I think anyone who's had background in public agency service, and actually in public, or pardon me, private as well, you know how time-consuming HR issues are once they flare up. And we were an agency who only knew how to deal with an HR problem after it was on fire, after it was basically a lawsuit. Okay, that's when the lawyer was involved. So we were in a very reactionary mode. It was very expensive. It was very destructive. We went out and looked for professional services. We talked to several different firms. We expressed the wide range of services we were looking for, and RGS came back head and shoulders above all, of the other recommendations. And based on local experience, too. They had a very good track record here locally in Marin. So I think essentially what happened was we then communicated to the board the general value of the HR services. We brought them on with a very clear mandate to spend 6 months assessing the district and essentially just being here and helping put out fires, but starting to understand our needs. They did that, and they did it in a very methodical and effective manner, and I think anyone who's on the front line of district management knows that the tone of problems and the discourse, the quality of discourse of the district has just gone, everything has gone in the right direction. And we have not had a single new HR issue come up since they started in September. So there's been a tremendous amount of preventative value having professional HR services. And it is not our anticipation that this level of expenditure goes on forever. What they're doing is basically helping the district build enough, sustainable, internal, good HR administrative infrastructure to where we can take care of our problems proactively in the future. That's probably going to be more than a year, to be honest. But that's why we're doing this under contract. Because when they're done, basically, they can fade out of the picture and we can maintain, quality HR aspects, but not doing it at an exuberant cost. So that's the short version of it. It is very much an issue of avoided costs. The time that I was here, within the first couple months I was here, we had already shelled out $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 between attorney's fees and various payments for employee matters. This is a $200,000 contract. We burned through that in a couple of we burned through that in a handful of legal meetings, basically. So it's a cost-benefit question for the district, and I think that's how we got here.
Yeah, and I don't think there's ever been an HR here before.
There
No.
was.
There was?
Yeah, we had HR functions provided by Kaufman Associates from
But that-
1996 to
Oh, long time ago.
1999, and
We
then the
got
So we're
district
catching
decided to do it on their own, and things from 1999 forward started to kind of fall apart.
Anyway, that's
It's
a long
And among
story.
the many things they're going to be doing includes developing policies and procedures that will serve us for a long term. So as Greg said, we do not anticipate it being this level of expenditure, but it's what we need right now to basically come into the modern age in terms of HR. And Greg said not a single new issue had arisen, which is not to say everybody suddenly got calm, but to say that having the staff of RGS, Sophia, in the office has prevented any new problems from rising up to the level of litigation. And I'm happy to say I see staff members in the nodding in a way that makes me feel like, this isn't just window dressing. This is actually making a real difference. I understand that it may seem expensive, but when you look at the legal bills that we were spending up until now, it certainly proportionally is much smaller. And I think it is money just very, very well spent. So that's how this board has come to at this point.
And I stand corrected, it's actually 1993 to 1999. It was the year of the annexation motion.
We're going to lose our board historian.
Yeah, the extra cost is very understandable. I think we are basically saying that it's a case made on avoided costs and reduce long-term costs for the district.
Can I just ask, I have a lot of experience in this and I'm not looking for a job, but it seems to me that a well-qualified, experienced human resources manager would just do the job for you.
They would at the cost of about $200,000 a year in fixed permanent costs. Because that's what it costs to bring on a public agency HR. And
That's not the benefit.
that's our benchmark.
It's not the benefits.
No,
that would be with the
That's
benefits.
with the benefits.
That's with everything, yeah.
That's total
Full
cost.
gross.
So we did consider that. That was the original direction, or pardon me, the original consideration. So we did consider that. It's a very good point, and it's an unfortunate reality that when the fully loaded burden costs of a public agency professional at that level are in the $200,000 a year range now. So this actually netted out. Yeah, and because it's not a fixed structural cost, it's one that can be dialed down 18 months from now. The benefits were pretty clear. Yeah, there's no good that. So lots of good reasons we felt, but there's no perfect answer to this stuff. No question.
If you look at the legal bills, because I've been on the financial committee, dramatically dropped. Huge. So,
Those are outside,
Those
really dropped, yeah.
Well, we had to have some things taken care of, but HR should take care of, but we didn't, so we had to use a legal counsel.
It got to that level. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess actually, sorry, not to, one other thing I'll say to the value that they're assisting with, We make it sound like basically all they're doing is putting out fires and babysitting or creating problems, and there's an element of that. But they are also, I think, really assisting, and they're planning on assisting with some of the really much needed long-term, essentially restructuring of the district if you're looking 5-10 years down the road. I mean, doing the heavy lifting to help evaluate what those needs are. Because that involves things like job classification updates. There's a lot of work to be done to actually help the district move forward in some of its other strategic areas that don't appear to be HR related, but the support services they provide, I envision it helping move that forward. So, anyway, one more reason.
Can I just ask one more? This is a little out of order. It's one of the things they're evaluating, whether we have too many employees at the district, because you have a lot fewer at one time.
They are specifically going to assist with the staffing plan review.
Correct.
Yeah, we're
An
doing-
evaluation of.
That's in the matrix.
We're going to do more than that. We're doing a work study on top of that, correct? Of what the budget,
What did you say you're doing, a what?
a work study.
A work study?
Right.
Well, we haven't, I don't think we've termed it that, but I think we basically used very general terminology of, what are the staffing needs of the district if we're going out 5+ years. So that, I think that's about as general a description of an objective as we can. Anyway, any other questions on that?
So it is in the budget, though. We just went over it.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
That's all.
Yes.
I have one friendly amendment to this when we're ready to go. Frank? any
Sure,
friendly
just,
amendment?
basically what we've done is we've traded some legal costs for HR costs. We really haven't saved any money. But the way this contract is structured, it's not to exceed $200,000. So, and I have to figure our manager's gonna keep an eye on this contract to make sure that we keep it, within, of course, within the 200,000, but if there's a way to keep these costs down, it doesn't mean we have to spend 200,000.
Oh, no.
It's not to exceed 200,000.
Yeah, clearly.
And then we will evaluate this contract of HR services at the end of this year. We'll have almost 2 years on board, so we can see what we really need.
Any other board conversation, comments,
Well,
questions?
maybe my math is wrong, but we're doing, it's 32 hours a month. 32 hours a month.
All right,
So sorry,
can I ask for a motion?
No, I just want to make a comment. So sorry I stepped out, but I understand what you're saying, but I've experienced the employee discontent and actually had to sit in a couple of the meetings or the hearings and things like that. It's a very expensive and painful process, and it clarified for me that we were missing an awful lot of infrastructure in the personnel area. And one of the things that the group is doing for us is provide that infrastructure. So basically we're contracting for them to provide a handbook or a infrastructure of personnel, which should be finished by the end of this year. If you look at the chores that are set out, I think it's well worth the money. Yeah, that's one. Only from the last meeting.
All right.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the contract with RGS for human resource management services for the fiscal year 2014-15, and the amount not to exceed $200,000.
With the amendment to section 4?
With the amendment.
Two and four.
With all of the amendments.
Well, I have a friendly amendment to put some
Okay, let's do that again.
verbiage in here about the board to assess the HR. I don't know when you think it's appropriate, if you think it's 90 days or 6 months. And also that this work plan be evaluated maybe every 30 days when the bills are turned in to see if we're on track, Greg?
Well, my suggestion is that.
Because I don't have a clue what's been
Okay.
done or not.
My suggestion is that we do that as a standing action, either in the HR committee or the finance committee, just as a simple, regular contract oversight mechanism. I would suggest that versus putting a process, procedural stuff like that into the
Not for
contract.
evaluation?
Yeah. I think you simply say there are 4 different groups. I mean, if at a minimum, they meet with HR every month. And if there's a standing item that says, we're going to compare your costs to date and progress on your.
I don't understand why we would not want to evaluate someone
it's-
$200,000 for.
Well, it's I guess it's
We don't
a,
need to renew the contract.
yeah.
But
It's
is it gonna happen? Are we gonna?
Well, wait,
That's the board's.
wait a second. What I'm hearing is that we don't think that, we want to make sure that we're getting what we're paying for.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I look at the matrix and I see what they've already established, I mean, maybe I'm ignorant, but this is for year 13, 14, and for 14, 15, okay, in the matrix. And I'm making certain assumptions, I guess, but the things that are in arrears are completed?
They're actually somewhat, if you use this calendar, like January,
Yeah.
February, March, they're maybe a month behind, but generally
Okay.
pretty good.
So would it be acceptable to get a quarterly update instead of every month?
That's great.
Okay.
Yeah, and it would
You
say,
don't need to write the contract.
yeah, and my point is simply, yeah, maybe it's just, it's a contractual preference. I tend to avoid putting stuff like that in the contract and just make sure that we do it, because the contract is a unwieldy vehicle. So, you don't put stuff in there we don't need. That's just a personal preference.
I don't know, I'm sorry,
So-
but if the ratepayers are gonna pay someone that much money for 1 year, I just wanna
HR
make
committee?
sure.
But you're saying we as a board are not going to be able to do our job
No, I'm
unless we write it
saying
down
that,
into a contract with someone else.
we
That
missed
doesn't make
3
any sense
years
at all.
on our council's, it was said in her agreement that we would do it every year, and we missed it for 3 years. And I guess I just want, I'm trying to cover the bases now that it's there, so that we don't miss it, not to say that anybody's bad, and there's no blame or shame, but we had a difficult
So
period.
perhaps management, through our general manager, who we depend on for much of the information that comes to our board, in the future could come in with a quarterly or have Sophia maybe give a report or something, or
Okay.
however you want to do it, just to make sure we're on our critical
An
path.
HR report?
We have an HR committee every month.
Yeah, we have an HR report. Yeah.
I think the quarterly report would be like it's a practical balance, because some of the stuff is going to take a couple of months to do. And if you're looking back on a quarter, you've got enough timeline to see a discernible chunk of work.
Okay.
And also say, okay, now let's talk about the budgetary resources.
But it will be another thing that will be dependent on retracting, just trying to create, for us to be part of it.
But it's a nice required check-in, because it involves the board, HR committee, Sophia, and staff saying, hey, are things lining up? Quarterly, I think, is just a nice balanced timeline.
All right.
So I would think that would be good.
All right.
If I have direction on that, what I'll do is I'll work with the HR committee to make sure we schedule that quarterly report. Okay, very good.
And the sections 2 and sections 4, we
I have no idea.
put the actual
He might ask you to.
June 30th.
He wants the
The time
date,
certain dates on
Oh, thank you.
July 1st, June 30th.
30th, in both 2 and 4 sections.
Yeah, so we're going to lock down the date, the term of the contract. Jolie, do you want Pat to restate the motion? Or do you think he should?
Yeah, I think you should, because I know it's approve the agreement not to exceed 200,000 with the amendments to section 2 and 4, stating that the term of the agreement is July 1st, 2014 through June 30th, 2015. I think that was what the word more should make some other changes.
I have to say exactly what she just said.
Okay, I'll second the motion.
All right,
you.
Wasco, Hager, all those in favor? Aye. Did I hear you, Peter?
the. Yeah, no, I.
Okay, thank you. The motion
And
passes.
then you can just say, the board's giving direction to have Greg work with staff on coming back with a quarterly report.
That'll show up.
Through the HR.
That'll show up in the minutes, so it's documented.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Item number 8, consideration of.
Wait, can I just, how long do you think the next item will be?
I don't know. Okay, consideration of approving postponement of effective date of section 7.1D, transfer of title, and 7.2B, sale of property of ordinance 66. This is from last week.
Yes, and there is no staff report, and actually because it is fairly simple, even though it looks, it might look like a lot of material. You had in your board package the ordinance that was recently just approved, and that is ordinance 66. It was voted on and approved by the board, and it put into effect a new set of requirements showing the full range of activities on private laterals, requirements for testing and inspection, and so forth. Very quickly after we passed that, as everyone knows, it's a fairly, it's a type of ordinance that can have a lot of impacts on real estate transactions. We had a really productive sit-down, kind of direct outreach with the Marin Board of Realtors, and just focused very specifically on, look, these are these requirements, we think we can do them, but we need, if this starts on this date, we're going to have agents all over the county and customers and you guys who don't really know exactly what to do. And that sounded like a recipe for, a big black eye. So what we thought would be a good approach, because it's none of these remaining needs are difficult to do. They're just basic things like making sure we've checked, administrative procedure. Does a certain piece of paper have to go to a certain party? Because I think everyone in this room, most people can appreciate when you're in the middle of a real estate transaction, any of that uncertainty, any of that delay becomes, it adds to another stressful situation for one way. So the solution, and this happened all very quickly, which is why we got this, was based on the discussion with Andy Fegley, was to simply say, okay, look, let's just agree that the effective date for those specific items that deal with property transactions don't go into effect for 60 days beyond when the rest of the ordinance goes in. And the only purpose of that 60-day window is to give a working group that we've already created with basically 2-3 people from Land Realtors and a similar group from the district to basically work together to iron out all the practical details and come back to and review them, of course. So the action you have before you this evening, because we then asked Jolie, well, what's the administrative or process by which we appropriately do this very narrow action? And we basically said, the simplest way is to just do a new ordinance, even though it seems a bit much. So the ordinance you have in front of you this evening is the process by which you're executing the agendized item, which was to effect the delay in those 2 sections of the ordinance. So I hope I have made sense. You're considering a 1-page ordinance that delays by 60 days those specific sections of the new ordinance to give us time to put into place the administrative framework and process so that it doesn't gullet the works with the real estate transactions. And I cannot say enough, just for what it's worth, I feel this is a very difficult topic. It has been in the past. It's been a source of tremendous discord. And the discussions recently have been really constructive, and how do we most effectively get this done. So I thought that was really notable and really positive. And to Andy and his organization's credit, that's entirely. So that's the recommendation of staff, is to approve this ordinance. And I'll be happy to answer any questions, and I don't believe there's anyone here this evening.
Where's somebody?
No,
Okay.
he means.
Yeah, sorry. So I'll hand it back to the board.
Thank you. And as I understand it, so this is a new ordinance. What we have in the
board packet is the ordinance that we passed last week.
Correct,
Right.
This is the ordinance that we're voting on tonight.
correct.
Okay, and I heard Pam express concern, and I want to,
Well,
is it proper that we are just, that we are receiving this in the meeting today? Is there any requirement that this be posted in the board agenda? for us
No,
to consider today?
the agenda topic, I was asked about that, the agenda topic is just consideration of approving postponement of the effective date in section 7.1D, transfer of title, and 7.2B, sale of property of ordinance 67. So that, I believe, is reasonable notice that we are taking some action to postpone it, and how we determined the best action was to just do an ordinance amending 66. So an ordinance amending an ordinance, and it only affects those two sections, and it only affects the effective date of those two sections.
Yes. Pam?
So, everything's the same.
Yes.
Everything will stay the same. We're just putting it off for
Just
60
changing
days.
the two dates.
What's the second date?
No.
The
The two
full-
sections.
I only see one date.
Well, transfer of title date and sale of property date.
There are two separate
Okay.
sections that involve real estate transactions. as
Is the
opposed-
transfer of title date an item here that's defined?
It's in
Section
66.
7.
It is in
1A,
66.
or 7.1A.
Yeah, the only thing I have is for the public is if we're going to, if we're just amending this for a time, that everything needs to go with it, the whole kit and caboodle, the findings. So you just have one page here. You see what I'm saying? I think it should reflect in all findings, because this ordinance is like, what?
Yeah, but it does say,
Does
it
it say
changes
that?
the effective date, and then it also says all other provisions of ordinance 66 shall remain in full force
Okay,
and effect.
so then that includes
That includes all of 66.
provisions.
So ordinance 66, except for those two sections.
I just haven't seen the word provisions in the ordinance. Just want to make sure we cover
It's,
it.
yeah, it's in that.
I
section.
guess what I maybe would have said is sections, because that's the way that it's put together, is under sections, not provisions. That's my only thing.
Brian?
Well, we're just amending the ordinance that we approved last
That
week.
is it, right?
We
Just give them a little more time to digest it and understand it.
Is 60 days enough for them?
Yes, we feel it is. They've already had started their review, and we have had probably 3 staff meetings already on this topic since the vote last week. So no one's been sitting still. This kind of went to the top of everyone's agenda. For good reason. I mean, I admit what I saw, that, when Andy's points, the Board of Realtors points, I mean, they're really basic customer service issues when you kind of strip away some of the politics. It's like, look, you want this permit, okay, got it. But there's again, I kind of, it's something I think we all can relate to because we have been through property transactions, and the importance of not unnecessarily adding to that burden while still getting the intended benefit is a pretty worthwhile goal, I think. So I'm really encouraged by what we heard by them. I mean, I think it's actually a really good opportunity for partnerships in a lot of other areas.
Did Andy talk about like complicated laterals, like
We
duplicate?
know they're out there, like we have
There's not a
multiple
lot though,
properties.
right? There's not a lot.
No, there's
Okay.
pretty simple language in here about how they are a common,
Okay.
there's exceptions, unfortunately, commons. The rest of it was deemed pretty much stuff that we could readily address through existing procedural steps and so forth. So we felt pretty good about that. And as I mentioned, we have got a targeted outreach going with like their city engineering staff, permitting staff. So everyone's basically up to date on what the rollout looks like.
So we've been talking about this for 6 years, since I joined the board.
Well, there you go.
And in theory, based on what they said in Mill Valley, it may take them 20 years to replace all the laterals, even though it may take a little bit longer. I see 2 months delay in this particular section as relatively minor. So we can
Well, and And
Right.
I don't know if everyone knows that SASM passed a similar ordinance the night after our meeting last week. It needs to be considered by all of their independent member agencies, but, you know, this is certainly a trend. And I talked to Andy Begley also, and he said, you all are under a cease and desist order. We sort of knew this was coming down the pipe. So that,
And
you know.
SASM maybe get one too if they.
Well,
They're
we
gonna be cognizant
we
of that.
benefited from their discussion occurring ahead of ours, so to speak, and I think everyone recognizes that. And maybe this is an opportunity where that can kind of turn around. What I mean by that is because the rollout has to go through the member agencies, it will take time for the full effect of that action that just occurred last week to actually go out to the transaction money. Whereas with ours, that's not the case. It's much more direct. So the roles are kind of reversed now, where we have to figure out some good practical ways to work with this quickly. And with any luck, those are things that basically we can turn around to the SASM agencies and go, well, here's what we did. You know, here's what seemed to work. So hopefully there's some benefit there. The fact that it is happening all at once, so to speak, might actually be an opportunity.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay. On page 7, item C, under inspection report standards, I see some interesting language.
On last week's?
Oh, on your actual, on page 7 of the actual draft ordinance.
Did we miss something?
Oh,
This is what we had last week.
I just want a point of clarification. We're speaking to the inspection report shall contain an express certification from the certified inspector.
Where's that?
So, that's item C on page 7.
Yes,
So anyway, certified inspector.
Who is that?
Right.
Well, that's
Miles, are you a certified inspector?
I am a certified, but there's only one other person in the county besides myself who's a certified inspector.
Certifiable or certified?
Well, a little bit of both.
So certified in what method of inspection?
Under NASCO, in the PACP.
Okay, lat P, right, on laterals, lat P?
Right.
And Steve makes this, as I bet? Yep. So is this a requirement of all the contractors?
Well, that's a great example of what the
We'll be seeing
screening
another
of
ordinance.
what we're doing with this ordinance. We are going through, like, basically highlighting. what
I'm
we're
just
saying.
curious.
No, it's a great point, Pat, seriously.
Well, I'm all for it, by the way.
It's kind of what we're
Just
doing
to
with
let
the
you know.
realtor. It's like saying, this says this is gonna happen. Do we all agree what that exactly
Well,
means?
But Greg, just to let you know, I've been on this charge for NASCO, PACP, LACP, MACP certification for contractors.
That's easy
So
for you.
keep it in here, don't get rid of it, I don't care what you think.
No, I just want to raise a point that Los Colinas tried to implement, which is the reason why I went and got certified, because they were the ones who tried to implement this thing. And they backed off, 2 or 3 months.
Because the contractors will be in upheaval over it, but.
Oh, yeah, I mean, so, yeah, I mean, you ought to understand that there'll be pushback on this.
Well, I've been telling them for years, I just haven't done it yet. My boss wants to do it, and I agree with him wholeheartedly. It's the only way you can put a proper damage severity index on the condition of the pipe. Otherwise, you've got too many different opinions, and there's no standardized language. So
All right,
it's
are you
smart.
taking all this in?
Sorry.
That's
Yeah, but
okay.
are we gonna shut down all real estate sales and?
No.
No.
All right, I'll take,
No, it can be
I'll take it
done.
out to the public for any public comment on this item.
Well, I'm Tom Gaffney from Ross, and I've helped a number of agencies try to implement this, including Los Colinas and San Rafael in Nevada, and they're all working on it.
Yeah.
And it's a great opportunity to have a uniform ordinance
Right.
throughout the county.
That's-
Does it all have this language in it, Tom?
Not yet.
No, and I'm not sure why this is different than Los Colinas', but they got a terrible uprising.
Oh, yeah, had a huge.
Well, that was long ago, and that's before people,
About 2 years
well,
ago.
you know, Sausalito took a lot of the brunt of Ed Siegel and the rest of the, sorry, Tom, I interrupted you.
No, you didn't. I just thought that we're glad that Sausalito took the brunt of it.
From what I understand about this ordinance is our consultant, Vivian, was working with another agency And we believe that this is going to be, it's not the model ordinance, but it's what people are starting with in this area, or what agencies are starting with.
Starting year.
She did it with,
That's fine.
who she just,
I think it's a combination of the latest and greatest from the various East Bay Mud agencies, and then to a lesser degree, I do think they were paying close attention to the SASM
Yeah.
process, because that was happening
So
right there.
I mean, so as we move forward, it'd be ideal to communicate and try to have
Well,
something
I
standard
have-
just by
I've said this for
agreement.
what it's worth, I mean, it's just, I think it's a relevant comment to the JPA managers, you know, why there's not a CMSA-wide standard on private laterals
Right.
that says, here's how we all treat private laterals. I think it's a really worthwhile question to ask yourself, if it's something you can get to. Because right now, we're close, we're not all over the board, but we're, you know, given the nature of our organizations and our relationships and the importance of the laterals, we should have a standard ordinance.
God forbid we
Yeah,
can
that's
start
so
reducing
we're going
inflow
to
and
be the leaders to
infiltration.
have a
That would
summit.
create a challenge out there.
right now.
Any more public comment? Your name and your,
real estate agent here.
your name and your town,
I'm a
sir.
resident of Marin County for 50 years, a real estate agent for 35 years, and in full disclosure, I'm very slow stepdad. We recognize the problem, there's no question about that. And we would love to see conformity, so we don't have to think every community is something different.
Right.
So the whole concept is great, and if working through this, we can have, I read this twice tonight, while I was sitting here, I still don't understand it, but I can see some things that are going to be confusing to most real estate agents. So in the next 60 days or something, it could be.
Please, and all that, pass those on.
You know Andy
It's
Bagley, right?
something, yeah, and I know Andy really well, you know, and
Yeah.
he's a new guy in the block, you know. he's new
Yeah.
here. But I'd rather have him than Henry.
That's the whole point of this working group, really. It's to have people who actually have to say, I get this, and what do I do with it? Be able to go, yep, I totally get it at this point. And there's people in our organization like that.
Clear, so we can advise our clients. It's not that we have to do it, it's
Yeah.
that we need to know clear instructions on how to do it.
Well, in line with that, can we, as a group, send this to CMSA as a suggestion?
I think it's something you could, well, you guys.
Once you iron it out.
Yeah, I think we should probably wait until we.
It's a future
Till you get the
discussion.
feedback? All right, just to get them going, just to.
Well, and I think between the Marin Association of Realtors connection and then the Vivian Housing doing consulting for different folks connection, I mean, there may be ways to standardize it without using one of
So
the
rare.
governmental entities that has so many other things going on that it might
Got
be.
it. All right. I withdraw my suggestion.
All right, thank you. Any more public comment on this item? Thank you. Yes, sir?
Well,
Take name and town,
LCR.
because I know some people know.
I'm sorry, I have not read the whole thing, excuse me. Miles O'Dwyer, Larkspur, California. Not a beautiful town that is. I have not read this whole, and so I apologize for that. One of the things that I was looking at here was notice to repair, where the corrective action may include a requirement to allow to be replaced altogether, and may also include the installation. And there is a specifically, there's a time limit. See, I'm not saying where that is. There's going to, a time limit is going to be given to do that. I would caution who's ever issuing that time limit that there's enough contractors in Marin County to actually get it all done.
There's plenty of contractors outside of Marin County that could probably step up. Wrong answer.
But, well, no, that's, I don't mind competing against it, that's okay. But the ones that would be able to do it are, tied up over in the East Bay, because they've got the same issues going
Better
on.
scheduling, isn't it?
Well, it is, and I'd be happy to have a nice long backlog out there, but I'm thinking that even now, under the lateral program, I have had to ask for special dispensation, which has been given to me, and I'm thankful of it, because the homeowner drags their feet. And so I've got a 30-day window, a backlog of 30 days of doing jobs. The homeowner and it's a 90-day window under the lateral grant program now. The homeowner drags his feet for 60 days and expects me to get it done in the next 2 weeks. Well, I mean, it can't happen.
And you're already under contract.
Yeah, yeah, you know, so, I mean, I'd like to throw that out as having the program that we've got right now, the lateral grant program, is being managed very effectively, and when that situation has come up, it has been very reasonably handled, in my opinion, and I just want to make sure that this thing would be, on a larger basis, taken care of in the same way.
Well, so for everyone in the audience, any comments and things they might have more after looking at it more in the future, please, I would encourage you to either get a hold of Randall Ishii here at the district, or if you have, a contact already at the Realtors Association, like Andy Fegley, because we want to get all of the practical suggestions and improvements we can. But 60 days we're hoping is a generous amount of time to get that and really incorporate it and do some dry runs with it, with some working groups, and then say, okay, it's ready for prime time. So if you have ideas, we really do want to hear them.
So I'm looking at
very
this
earnest about that.
for other
Yeah,
venues.
anyway, it's very important.
Yeah,
Certainly.
we all want this to be implemented smoothly. So thank you for your comments.
Glad you showed up, Miles. Thanks for coming in.
All right, I'll bring it back to the board for any last minute discussion or comments.
Just a quick comment. There's 4 incorporated cities in our district, and the county who issued permits, and we need to send probably each of them a nice letter explaining what this is, what it's about, send them a copy of it.
We're working on exactly that kind of activity thing. I've got stuff assigned, like basically we all got together and Wendy's reaching out to certain people, Randall's reaching out to certain staff levels, I'm reaching out to city managers. So it's a great idea. We want to basically do everything we can right now for the next, say, 30 days on real simple direct outreach stuff like that.
Are we going to run an ad? Are we going to also post the ordinance in the newspaper too?
It will be published.
Will it be published?
It already was. The ordinance was, but now this one will be too.
Well, this one will be, the amendment will be.
Yes.
Okay, if the motion's in order, I would so move that we approve ordinance number 67. Sanitary District number 1 of Marin County, ordinance number 67, amending ordinance number 66, relating to the effective date of the lateral order.
Beckman, Sullivan, thank you. All those in favor?
Roll call.
Oh, we need a roll call, I apologize.
Dr. Meggs, how do you vote? Aye. Dr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Watson?
Yes.
Eggers?
Aye.
Philip?
Aye. Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
We actually got it.
Okay.
We're going to revise it.
You want a 10-minute break? Okay, or 5. Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break. Is it convenient for the next 2 items?
I spoke out of that would, you guys.
Payment agreement for treatment service by and among CMSA, San Rafael, Sanitary District 1, and Sanitary District 2 in the city of Lynchburg. Greg, do you want to introduce anything about
Well,
this?
I guess I'd look for direction as to how best to discuss this. Jolie, do you want to please?
Well, I think that the board members have been made aware of certain potential issues with what would happen if we did enter into this payment agreement amendment. And so without getting into confidential
Tom, do you have a copy?
legal advice, I think what the board's direction would be that, that you do not enter into this, you do not approve this resolution, you do not approve it, meaning that you're going to continue this item to a date uncertain, and you're going to give direction to council and the general manager to send a letter to CMSA, City of Larkspur, and CDCR of the state, requesting some further information, because upon review of this agreement, it is a majority of the board's opinion that we would like more information regarding bond, how this payment agreement affects the debt service, and I think specifically you were requesting from these three agencies, CMSA, Larkspur State, California, to obtain a written bond opinion of the effect of this payment agreement on Ross Valley.
So that's the staff recommendation.
That would be the staff recommendation at this point, is that you continue this item to a date uncertain, and give direction for council and the general manager to work on a letter. The other issue that, the reason why you want to continue this is, one, you have concerns over how this payment agreement really affects the debt service. The Ross Valley agency does not want to somehow become in default of its debt obligation, so that's why you want clarification from, you want a bond opinion on that. And also, it may affect the current litigation, but that isn't really the driving factor. I believe the driving factor is this board would like, you're confused, and you really want to make sure that Ross Valley and the ratepayers are not in some sort of financial or default with this payment agreement.
And this is the first time in a payment agreement such as this that San Quentin begins being mentioned as an agency of CMSA, and that they don't have an elected representative on the CMSA board.
Nor appointed.
Nor appointed, that's what jumps out at me. Okay, board members, any comments or questions on this?
So it would be a motion to continue this item and to give direction.
Well, we can comment first.
Yeah, you can, but that would be how you handle it. I would take a formal motion to continue.
Public, any members of the public that wish to speak on this item?
Why does City of Larkspur on here?
Well, that's one of the confusing things.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's one. And two, what was my other, oh yeah, is this related to the contract with San Quentin Prison that I
Yes.
read about in the paper too?
Okay.
I can answer that. If you notice the actual amendment, it's not executed by the city of Larkspur, it's only acknowledged by the city of Larkspur.
Okay.
So there's a little uncertainty about that. And there's also a paragraph that makes reference to CMSA contracting with the state to provide wastewater. And so it sort of acknowledges that there's already this ongoing relationship, this contract. And we just want clarification, because we now have a non-member, non-JPA member responsible for debt.
And the Larkspur's flow and ratings change too, how they're scoring more people in there.
So that.
Well, the number of inmates they have in there goes up and down.
San Quentin.
San Quentin.
It's in Larkspur.
Inmates in Larkspur, but
I think it's
I think that I don't see why we want to fix that. But anyway.
Yeah, it's part of the ongoing controversy that you read about in the paper.
On any given day, the average is around 990,000 to gallons per day, yeah, in a 24-hour period. Then in lockdown, it goes up substantially.
More showers.
They have nothing else to do.
Well, there's a lot of rioting that goes on. They just start flooding your toilets and everything. So it's, if there's an execution or something like that. So.
All right, any other public comment on this item?
Enjoy that.
Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for any comments or a motion, please.
I think on one of my last jobs here is to move that we just table it.
Yeah, you can just table it.
We'll table this resolution and direct staff to inquire about all the issues that have been raised partly by our own confusion about what the implications of this are. I would point out that the money going to the JPA from us is the same whether we adopt this or not within the percent or something. So it's not an issue of the money right now. It's really an issue of understanding what that means.
Second.
Sullivan Baker?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, unanimous. Item number 10, consideration of adopting resolution 1477 authorizing the president of the board to sign California Employers Retiree Benefit Trust Program Agreement. An election of Sanitary District 1 of Marin County to pre-fund other post-employment benefits through CalPERS and delegation authority to request disbursements form.
There you
I
go.
seldom read the whole thing, but
Take
that
a
just
deep breath.
seemed to go on and on.
Okay. I'll introduce this just briefly. We do have Wendy here, who is much more knowledgeable about this, so that's quite helpful. It is not a new item, but it's one that we've been trying to bring to the board for a while. I believe this is one of the recommendations from the last audit, or is it just one we?
It's actually more closely tied to civil grand jury.
Okay, that's
Finding
right, that's right.
report.
I knew it had something public. So if you recall earlier, there was the Marin County Grand Jury report on the long-term commitments related to public agency employee benefits. And as everyone knows, that's a long and complicated topic. But one of the things that came out of the Marin County Grand Jury report topic was, where do people stand on what's sometimes referred to as the OPEB, the other post-employment benefits funding versus your long-term liabilities. So the district does track that, and we did report out on that item in the response to the grand jury report along with other items. But basically, so even though from a financial perspective, in total, the district is tracking these commitments and we have the monies, there is a higher level of certainty or clarity, if you want to put it that way, that you can enter into by basically setting aside the monies in this managed arrangement with CalPERS. And I think essentially what's before the board this evening is, that an arrangement that you want to enter into, we would then provide the funding. And it does provide, again, as I see it, one of the important benefits is long-term clarity and very specific tracking and so forth for anything related to this topic. Again, the district financially, this is not a notable issue to our benefit, but we know it's an important topic to the public, and it will remain so for the foreseeable future. So, staff is recommending adoption, approval, and I'm going to hand it back to the board, but again, hopefully, maybe myself can answer questions.
Thank you. And to the point, I thought it was funny to me to realize this is kind of the opposite of bonding, right? It's instead of...
We put money on that.
Exactly.
Paying forward.
And,
yeah, you could look at it that way.
And one thing that I liked when I read the auditor's report was that it said, you need to, this is a good idea to us, depending on what else you have to do with your money. So it seems like it's, something to consider, but board members, questions, comments?
I sit on 4 public agency boards, and Ross County Sanitary District is in the best shape with its other post-employment benefit liability than any agency that I sit on. Some are in multi-million dollar, the whole is multi-millions of dollars. So Ross County has done a good job on this thing. And I sit on the Emergency Mosquito Vector Control District, and we just did the same thing last month up there in Patati. There was an issue, since we're going to be putting an awful lot of money into the fund, because we're in debt in the millions of dollars. We were worried about the return that the state would be giving us on our and our money. It turned out we got a final number from the state that they were going to be guaranteeing us 1.5%. Wendy says we've got some numbers here she's distributed, which shows some better numbers, some better percentages over a period of time. It was interesting how the state answered us. They said, well, we guarantee you 1.5%.
Yeah, it's general. It's strategy 3 from.
Anyway.
Al, questions, comments?
So
something I saw here about 4%.
Yeah, that's what I saw.
Is that true?
I'm
For the,
gonna put money in the fund.
for the pre-fund account, 4%?
The actuary who did the report used a 4% assumption on annual interest rates for funds in trust. So when they're doing their calculations to determine how much money should be invested annually in order to achieve some future amount of money based on all of the data on our employees, they're assuming 4% is being earned annually. And if you look at the CalPERS sheets that I handed out, their longest running one is achieving approximately 4% annual interest rate since 2007, since its inception.
Which was right at the beginning of a
The
major
downturn. Yes.
depression.
Considering the time, it
Where would this be in the budget? Just have it have its own separate?
It's already accounted for in the budget because that is an accounting requirement, that it be on paper. The investment of the funds or pre-funding is not something that is mandated by accounting rules, but it is considered a best practice.
So we pay for this already, for sure.
Right, but I'm
That's
just
clear.
concerned that we wouldn't be dipping into those funds. Are they restricted, protected?
That's the point of investing them here. This puts them in trust.
Okay.
So they would only be used for the purpose of post-employment benefits.
And do we need to have another actuary for that? This was 2 years ago this was done.
Yes, becoming part of CalPERS requires that an actuarial report be done every 2 years on their schedule, which means we have to go next year
Okay.
with them. It's a relatively, with all of the things we have to contract out, it's relatively inexpensive.
An actuary?
Yes,
Isn't it a lot of money?
I know, but our report was about $2,500.
Okay, I don't have any other questions.
And this is, what we are considering is whether to do this, to put the money in, or to just set it up so
Basically,
we
enter
could do
into it and
this.
set it up so we can start doing it, so we can start funding it there, yeah.
Well, and
it's prudent.
The idea being that we fund according to the recommendations in the actuary report.
Which one of
Wait,
them?
Wendy, just to clarify for, well, I guess at least for myself, we do enter into a new contractual, is there a new contractual arrangement that we enter into with CalPERS?
Yes, that's the, it's a very simple agreement that's in with the item.
Okay, that's what I.
It's Exhibit A.
Mhm.
So Mary, I wasn't sure if that's where you're going, but yeah, there's this, I mean, we will execute an agreement and we will implement this process and start moving the funds in and so forth.
And it is something that is completely separate from any of the pension activity with CalPERS or any other activity we have with CalPERS.
And that is the staff recommendation that we do
Yes,
this.
yes, yes.
And, I'm sorry. These funds are all from our agency?
For our employees.
Which one?
Our-
70,000.
That's from our agency, yes. That is our balance. We would invest those funds then with this pool, which would allow us to be part of a multi-billion-dollar pool of
This
investment.
may be off the wall, but if there's a new contract, and let's say the pensions change, and the employee has to put money in, is that going to matter or not?
This is retiring health benefits.
That's what I meant. For
One
the
other,
pension.
it's just so.
It would change the results of an actuarial report. So what would happen is if there's a change in the benefit or who contributes to the benefit, an actuary would take that into consideration as one of the criteria in the report. They would take into consideration how much we already have invested in the trust, as well as all of the future calculations that they're doing, and it would just reset the annual amounts that they're suggesting we contribute.
That's what I thought.
Presumably, if we lower our benefit or if we ask employees to contribute, then the agency would be contributing less money.
Okay, thank you.
Any public comment on this item? Okay, then I'll bring it back to the board. Any final
It's
comments?
complex. One last question, will we get like an annual statement from them? Is that how this is gonna work? How are we gonna know
I
how?
don't know.
How much we have in, how much we paid out, I mean.
Yeah, I'm not sure what reporting will.
Hers is annual and everything else.
This is online on CalPERS, so we would have online access to the fund performance at any given time. And we would have at least quarterly access to statements.
From them. They show how much we put in, how much we earned in interest for that?
Yes, it would be very much like if you had a 457 or 401k.
Right. I mean, we can state electronically, you can just print out and put it in the bag.
Well, yeah,
Yes.
they're gonna have login access for folks that work in the agencies, and you also have access for their investors.
But for the board, you want the board to get a report.
Yeah, so for example, auditor, not to go, I mean, these are probably reports that our auditors in the future would review.
Absolutely.
And then there would be at least some reference to them either in the semi-annual or the annual budget reports. I mean, there are significant enough item under our personnel costs, specifically benefits, that we're always going to want to be tracking.
I'm going to channel Frank, though. I think we should see the board should see the
I
numbers.
so if there's a statement that we can access from CalPERS that shows either, I would suggest either 6 months or annual, by all means. We'll look into it, and if we can find a suitable report, we'll include it. If not, we'll come up with a sort of a custom one that we think at least meets your needs. I agree. I mean, it's a long-term commitment from the board. And it's not hard to track on a semi-annual and annual basis.
No, not at all.
Okay.
So we can, never mind. I'm just thinking.
This is really something that's pretty behind the scenes once it gets started. You know, it's a long, slow, steady process of contributions.
That's so small.
So anyway, not to minimize the importance of it, but it's not like this is going to be a real dynamic situation that changes a lot year to year.
Right.
I hope that's.
You hit it big.
Roll the dice.
I see 3 examples of strategies for investment portfolios here. So what I'm curious about is, this board is not going to select the strategy. We're depending on staff to do that, or?
No, they're doing it.
CalPERS will pick the strategy for us.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, they would invest in the strategy that we choose.
Okay, so who
What
makes
that
that
means-
choice?
The board should make the choice.
Okay, so is that a choice we'll be making tonight?
You can direct staff to, as to which strategy. Strategy 1 is higher risk
Yeah. I
and
see that.
potentially higher return. Strategy 3 is the lower risk and
Right.
lower return.
And you know there's no cash in cash now, right? You can't make money with cash. That's why it's not in the portfolio. It's just one of the Gantt chart bars, so it's not really there. I bet you
So-
it's coming right around the corner. Anyway.
From a staff perspective, I would choose strategy 2.
I put it on half.
You're an intermediate kind of person.
Does the board have a strong preference? Do you want us to simply?
I don't know how
Strategy 1.
So that's a question I have, because I'm wondering if tonight's the night to make that decision, or will the new board?
New board should do it.
I'm not gonna just, I don't know what.
We can start the setup process probably, and what's your thoughts, Wendy, on?
And I'm hoping there's questions from the crowd.
They don't show how much money is in each strategy.
No, just
Yeah,
that's
just
just
one
$3.5
total assets
billion, yeah.
So,
Like,
and the other two have really short term.
All three
are pretty short. Well, this one's 2007,
7-11
the others
as
are
well.
11 and
Strategy 1 is the oldest
Right.
they have in
That's right.
place.
Since inception, we've got 2011, 2012, and one has been since the toughest times we've gone through recently, since 2007.
And it actually came out at the end of that, over that period of time, up till April, with approximately 4% annual interest, annual return, which isn't bad, considering they went through the recession. But it is a higher risk option. It has many more of the equities.
As
As our
a
investments.
student of ultra-conservative investment strategies, and having endured some of the tumultuous times in the last 20 years, my first thought is to follow some of the more proven track record statistics and not necessarily go with most recently accepted strategies. That's just one humble board member's.
Well, it depends whether you look at it as for your own personal strategy
No,
or you.
I'm talking about the public's money, not
Agent-
mine.
Yeah, but the agency's probably gonna be around for another 100 years. It's been around for 100.
Well, I see that they've loaded up plenty of risk in global invest or equities, so this is the least the most conservative blend of all is strategy one.
We can,
The most conservative is actually strategy 3.
Wait.
so we can probably reallocate this readily.
Because it went into fixed income, okay.
So if we just started with the most conservative for the moment, and then, revisit this 6 or 12 months from now, I mean, again, we're not talking about
Right.
either huge amounts of money, or you can see huge differences in probably the near-term performance anyway. But I don't think, it is, we should try to get direction ideally this evening, if the board's comfortable with it. And again, I want to emphasize, it's not a huge financial decision, and we can bring back new information in the future.
I don't know what I'm voting on.
Is it possible for us to pass the
Versus something
resolution
that's
and consider the strategies
Yes.
at our next
Sure,
meeting?
sure.
Yes, the contract and the
Excellent, yeah.
choice of strategies are two different
Yeah,
things.
thank you.
Right, would you feel
Okay.
comfortable with that?
Yeah.
We can do this at a later date.
Great,
Excellent.
all right, then I
So
will
I'll-
ask for a motion on
I'll
the
move.
resolution.
I'll move that we adopt resolution number 14-1477, approving participation in CARES CERT VT program and delegating authority to request disbursements?
Request what?
Disbursements. Why are we requesting disbursements?
Because we would have to authorize disbursements to people who receive the benefit.
But this is to put the money in, isn't
We're setting up the contract, but in order to set up the account, CalPERS wants to make sure someone is, or some people are authorized.
it? To disperse as well.
Yes, because
Okay.
this is meant to pay
Okay.
a benefit at some point.
Then that's what my motion is.
Okay.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Sullivan makes. All those in favor?
It's a resolution.
It's a roll.
Oh.
I was trying to. Honestly, I looked and I didn't see resolution.
And there it is.
All right, I'll let you take
6
over
times.
then.
Director Meigs, how do you vote?
Aye.
Sullivan?
Yes.
Roscoe?
Aye.
Hager?
Aye.
Silla?
Aye. Thank you. Agenda item number 11, verbal report by board members and request for future agenda items.
I didn't bring my notes. It's a lot of information we're disseminating, but one of the biggest things that the North Bay Watershed Association is really looking at is climate change and how they're going to plan for climate change. So it makes me wonder how we're going to plan our CIP with climate change, including sea level rise. That's just, and Wolf was there, what's his first name? From the what?
Regional water.
From the, and I talk about
Water quality control board.
amazing speaker without PowerPoint, incredible. It was really one of the best meetings. So if you're ever bored on the first Friday of the month at 10 a.m. or 9:30, very interesting committee. I'm really happy to be on that. I'll bring the official minutes next meeting, or send an email if you want. That's it for me. Frank?
Well, we have set up a meeting on July the 2nd at 11:30 in the morning at our Sanitary headquarters with Sonoma County Supervisor Mike McGuire. You might ask, why have we set up a meeting with Mike McGuire? Mike McGuire will be actually our next state senator. And what he's doing is meeting with public agencies in Marin County. And so July 2nd, 11:30 is our time. And we're inviting our board members, our board member-elect, two of them, hopefully both of our new board members can make that meeting. It's at 11:30 on July 2nd. And he just wants to talk about what we're doing, what we're up to, the challenges we're facing right now. So he wants to be able to hit the ground running when he gets himself elected. And, you know, I don't mean to be presumptuous about him getting elected, but
We almost got
it's pretty much a foregone conclusion. He'll be the next state senator representing the North Bay here. So it's a good opportunity for our district to meet with him and let him know the kinds of challenges we're facing. And hopefully both you guys can both make it. But you're invited.
You already put it on his calendar.
And we'll put a notice out in the paper so that it's all legal, so that everyone knows what to do with this.
Do you two have anything to say
I-
before I?
I couldn't make my LAFCO meeting, and I'm still worried that someone was not able to attend the last LAFCO meeting.
I
That was-
had lunch with,
Mr.
tomorrow,
Simons.
so I can catch you up, just by happenstance, so.
I would
My
say,
only-
I'd be happy to fill in for you, but you
Well, I
won't be
actually sent a
here.
request out, no one got back to me. So I'm a little, just a little put off.
So my verbal report will be that this will be the end of 6 years of service on the board, and I'm pleased with most of the things that happened during the 6 years. There were a few bumps in the road, but we got an awful lot of work done. We got a lot of pipes fixed and pumps fixed, and I think the board is in good shape, the agency's in good shape, and the future looks bright.
Oh, yeah, I'm not going to be here anymore. And you're not going to stand in for me and see
One more
us
meeting,
say.
Peter. We have one more meeting. What is his last meeting?
I think I'm officially
He has to come
certified
in.
the
There's
1st
a-
of July.
Well, I hope that you both will come to the next month's meeting
By
where I
invitation.
presume that we will swear in our new board members, you
Yeah, you
know.
have to be here to open the meeting.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, you need a
But-
I believe that's a point of law. And 3 is a quorum.
But regardless, I just wanted to say thank you to both of you. You probably
Mary.
presided during the most tumultuous years a sanitary district could have, and I know it was personally probably very challenging at a lot of points
Thank you.
in terms of the
Thank you for
press
saying that,
coverage. Yes, but I think you served this district in very good stead, and I will miss you.
Well, we'll miss you
You
too.
can call anytime, Mary.
I shall. I'll have coffee with you at Ruley.
What I was hoping to touch on was, when I got here tonight, I realized I have some things to do in this next month, and Frank very astutely reminded me that I have a CMSA meeting next month. And I said I do. And then I, of course, tried to get Peter to stand in for me, and he wouldn't do it.
I'm busy all month.
Yeah, right. So I'll be attending another CMSA meeting, but I actually am very appreciative and humbled by having been elected and then re-elected to this board. And so I leave this board with a kind of a bittersweet, well, dark chocolate, taste in my mouth, because I'm worried, I'm always going to worry about the place a little bit. I'm hoping that Greg and the board keeps this district on task to please fix the infrastructure. That's, in my opinion, job one. So I like to think that folks have learned that a lot of the things we did were a benefit to the district, and as Peter said, there was some tumultuous times.
I think I said that.
I said a bump in the road.
He said a bump in the road, she said tumultuous times. To me, it's the same thing. But the bottom line is, I'm feeling good about the new board members that were elected, people that I helped support, and I look forward to reading all the good stuff that comes up over this. So, no pun intended on the come up.
Smooth flowing.
Anyway, thank
We don't want
you.
things to come up.
All right, thank you. All right, if there's nothing more, I'll adjourn.
There's another about next meeting, request for future agenda items. Where is the RFP process going for council?
It is basically posting this week to 3 electronic websites, so, yeah.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, thank you all. We're adjourned.
Yeah.